What's happening? Daily Data Podcast, March 18th, 2024. There's no serious news today. I mean, Niners did a bunch of free agency nonsense, adding special teams. That'll change things. That was the difference in the Super Bowl. Special teams. I mean, kind of. There was that play. Regardless, not terribly keen on what the Niners did over the weekend. Don't think they're going to be doing that much more moving forward. So it turns to the draft. And in that case, I got three names for you. And I kind of like the three names that I got going for you. We'll do a 3-round mock draft. We'll talk a little Warriors here. Dubs play the Knicks tonight. Steve Kerr is adamant that this team is going to go on a run. They get a nice win over the Lakers, a game that I can't even process what happened in because of the preposterousness of the final, 25, 30 minutes of that game. I've never seen anything like that, and I've seen some nonsense on an NBA floor before. The inability to get the shot clock to work, the amount of challenges. If Adam Silver didn't use that game on national TV between his two marquee teams as the impetus to make some goddamn rule changes over the pace of the game, then it's never going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, you're going to keep losing people because at a certain point it became a novelty. At a certain point I had to see what was going to go down. Like I had to keep watching, even though it looked like the game was well in the Warriors' balance. I mean, it was tight. I think it was a 7-point game when they took 25 minutes to do 13 seconds of action. But like, if I'm a casual fan, I could have turned that thing off. Here's a challenge. Here's another challenge. Now they can't get the shot clock to work. At a certain point, it became funny. At a certain point, it became must-see TV because of how inept everything looked. At the same time, like, this is a plague with the league. And that game on Saturday was the clearest example of how bad it has gotten. And obviously some of that is stuff that's never going to happen again. Like the shot clock doesn't work. But with the challenges and then you add that into it, man, it was preposterous. I don't even know what happened in the game. I forgot everything that happened in the goddamn game because all I could think about was how poorly the NBA has structured challenges and things of that nature. The NFL is bad. The NFL needs the commercial breaks. The NBA has enough commercial breaks. The NBA has enough time away from basketball. The fact that they don't have a crew of people in Secaucus or wherever that can just handle this and let the refs know so that they don't just sit around and it's just so bad. It's just so bad, and the NBA needs to do something about it. I know I'm complaining, but that was time in our lives that we can never have back. And again, I'd love to come in here with some hot analysis on how the Warriors handled that game against the Lakers. Honestly, I think Anthony Davis got injured, and that changed everything. But I'd like to have something deeper than that. But I just cannot remember what happened in the game because it felt like it took 5.5 hours to play. I mean, good on Major League Baseball. They were able to dramatically shift how much time it took to play a baseball game. And I think it's been a major boon for the league. And I think that it's going to keep getting better and better. Now, I don't know if it's going to do enough to stave off extinction. I don't know if it's going to do enough to make baseball relevant in professional sports again, but it did something. The NFL has their thing down to a science in terms of timing. They know exactly what they're doing when they're talking about entertainment product. Hockey doesn't really have this issue that much. They handle it pretty well. There's not that much stuff that goes to review. Honestly, I think the offsides reviews are preposterous. I watch Liverpool every weekend. The reviews that happen after every goal with VAR, whether it's in the FA Cup or the Premier League or Europa League, I mean, it's out of control with the review. It's gotten me to the point where I'd rather just live with the goddamn human error. I'd rather just live with mistake-prone humans making calls with mistake-prone players. And this need for perfection across the board from referees is understandable given the technology, given that at home we can see it in sometimes better fidelity than anyone who's standing on the court, standing on the ice, standing on the pitch. But the reviews are so over the top. The need for perfection is so over the top. The pace of play is just, it's gone to hell. And in the NBA, it's been a problem for a long time. And that game against the Lakers on Saturday was the case in point. Can I throw you some names for the 49ers? Can I indulge me and let me throw some names at you for the San Francisco 49ers for a 3-round mock draft? Yeah, we're at that time, baby. 31, 63, and 94. Now, in all likelihood, are the Niners going to be picking at 31, 63, and 94, their current picks in the first 3 rounds? Probably not. They'll probably move some stuff around. They'll probably make something happen. They'll shake and bake. But if we got to pretend that the NFL draft is not a very, very fluid situation, if we have to pretend that the 49ers are not going to be making moves, that they're not going to be trading picks, that they're not going to be angling for a guy in the 3rd round or the 2nd round or hell, even in the 1st, trying to move up, maybe moving down. If we're going to pretend, let's pretend and give the 49ers some guys that would be optimal and realistic at those spots. We're going to start with pick number 31. And we're going to start with my man out of the University of Missouri, Mizou, baby, Ennis Rakestraw. He's a cornerback, and I don't know if he's a cornerback that you can just pencil in, put in pen, Sharpie it, week 1 starter. But he's definitely someone who is going to have that job before it's all said and done this upcoming season if the 49ers draft him at 31. And I look at what the 49ers are trying to do on defense, what they've said they want to do on defense, and that's get back to the cover 3 system that they were so successful playing, albeit after they started using more 2 high safeties. But at least the temperament of the cover 3 system that they so loved under Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans, if they're trying to get back to that, Ennis Rakestraw is the number 2 corner for them because he's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy. He's not the fastest guy, but he's a mean sumbitch. He plays the game hard. He tackles well. He attacks the ball. He attacks his receiver, and he attacks in the run game. Ennis Rakestraw is what a number 2 corner in a system that's going to be pressing a lot should be. And I think if the 49ers can land him at 31, they're in a really, really good position. Because I don't know if he immediately answers a question. It's not a slam dunk. It's not a Kool-Aid McKinstry at 31. Whereas if you get Kool-Aid, he's immediately your number 2 because of the talent. He's just so above and beyond the talent of an Ambry Thomas or a Darrell Luther or anybody else you bring in. They brought in a guy from the Saints. I forget his name. He's so beyond that. You just have to give him the run. You have to put him out there and just see what happens. He's not really getting into the mix when you're talking about the number 2 cornerback job. Ennis Rakestraw isn't going to just show up and have the kind of physical skill set, the kind of talent to where it's obvious, oh, well, that's the dude, and you ride or die with him. He's going to have to win the job in camp, but it's something that I think he would do, and it's something that I think would be the 49ers would be better for having him do. Like, I think that the 49ers would prefer to have that kind of player who's going to bring the physicality, who's going to fit the tone of what it is they're trying to do on defense a lot more than just bringing in a really talented guy, because the boom is just as big as the bust possibility there. So Ennis Rakestraw at 31, I think would be a slam dunk, especially too. I like a lot of the 3rd and the 4th round corners. I think there's some like nice middle class, like true middle class depth at corner, but then you're really just tossing a dude into the mixer for that number 2 corner spot. Maybe that's what the Niners want to do. Like, I don't think they'd be wrong to do that. And there's a lot of top-end talent. If we're looking like 15 to 40, I think there's a lot of guys in there. And so if you're going to do it, I think you need to do it as early as possible. And for the 49ers, that would be 31. I don't think there's going to be anyone there at 63 that you're going to feel great about. And I think you could be in pretty good stead at 94, but now you're not guaranteed to have somebody who's going to come in and make something happen. Now you're just adding a dude into the mix, and he's not going to be as talented or as crazy as Rakestraw. I watched Rakestraw every week for years, right? Zoo Tiger here. This is a biased pick, full on. I've watched this dude week in, week out. He's a game changer. Now, Chris Abrams-Drain, the corner who was opposite of him, he could probably be had in the 3rd round. If I'm leaving this draft as the 49ers, and I say this as a Mizzou alum, as someone who loves Missouri Tigers football, but like if I'm leaving this draft as the 49ers, I want one of those 2 Missouri corners. They're dudes. I want somebody from Missouri. I want somebody from that Missouri defense that was so awesome this last year. You know, the Niners love to go to those sort of premier programs. I'm not going to pretend like the Missouri Tigers are a premier program, but that defense had so much talent, and I think was ideologically comparable to what the 49ers want to do, where you just have physicality across the board and make things happen. You'll give up a little bit in athleticism to get that physicality. Man, Ennis Rakestraw at 31, I think, would just be a slam dunk for the 49ers. It wouldn't be the pick that everyone wants. Everyone wants that next right tackle. Everyone wants that Trent Williams successor. Everyone's going to want to go flash. I think you go substance. Ennis Rakestraw is all substance. Let's talk 63. Pick number 63, kind of a no man's land, right? You're at the end of the second round, so you're not getting those guys who could have gone in the first round, drifting down. And you're probably taking, I mean, in a weird way, you're probably taking high-end third rounders. That the end of the second round is a tough spot to be. But I think that there's some value here if you can identify what it is you're actually looking for. If you're not just taking a dude because he's the most talented guy there, if you're taking a guy because you love the fit and you love the talent and you love the athleticism and you love the production in college, you could really go a long way. But you have to have an idea of what you want. For the 49ers, it's pretty clear what they need. They need more defensive tackles. And I'm looking right at 63, and I think there's a perfect option for him. His name is Rook, and I'm told I'm saying this right. Orororo. My name is Dieter Kurtenbach. I can't judge anybody on their name. But Rook, R-U-K-E, like Duke with an R. Rook Orororo. On principle, they got to take him. I need that name in my life. I want to say Orororo a lot. It's fun to say. But let me tell you something about Ruka Rororo, who's a defensive tackle out of Clemson. He's not very big, not by defensive tackle standards, right? This is not your 6'7", 330-pound, massive wingspan kind of guy. He is not going to be the one technique or the nose tackle who can just put his arms out and engulf a run game. That's not how he does his business. That's something I think the 49ers should look into. That's something I think the 49ers kind of miss. Not somebody who's trying to get into the backfield every play and sometimes get knocked back about 5 yards because he's only got that one move. I would like somebody who just holds the damn line in the middle of the 49ers defensive line. But that's not their game. That's not their ideology. That's not what they really want to do. I think Ruka Rororo, easy for me to say, is exactly the kind of player that they want. He does exactly what it is the 49ers want to do. He's 6'4", he's 290-something pounds, so he's a little undersized by sort of, again, defensive tackle standards. You can put some weight on him. But what he does do is get through the line of scrimmage, man. He has burst for days. I'm looking on Mock Draftable. He's got like a 95th percentile broad jump score. And if you know anything about the San Francisco 49ers and how they look at defensive linemen, you know the first stat they're looking for when it comes to combine testing is broad jump. They want to see a dude who can squat down and jump as far as possible because it tells you how much explosion they should have off the line. It's a very mechanically similar move. So Ruka Rororo has a 95th percentile of all defensive line broad jump. That means he's got crazy explosion off the line. And you watch his tape, and it's plainly evident. In fact, I watched the tape before I saw the numbers, and I said, this guy's got to have a crazy broad jump. Sure enough, he did. And you watch him, and technique-wise, I think he sheds blocks really well. I think he's really good at disengaging. He just gets into the backfield and makes plays. And sometimes you need to overthink this. This is exactly what the 49ers want out of their three techniques. They don't really employ a one tech. They might line up at the one technique, which is just off of the center. But they really are just three tech bodies that they line up interior. And if the 49ers are going to have a good run defense this upcoming season, I guess they could go out and get a big grizzly bear to just engulf the black hole in the middle to engulf. They could still probably do that, but they're probably just going to need more defensive linemen with crazy bursts so that they can play that one gap scheme, line off a shoulder, and just burst through, get into the backfield and make plays happen. Is it ideal? No. Has it worked up until this point? I mean, kind of up until halfway through the season, yeah. So you got 6.5 seasons where it's worked and half a season where it didn't. Maybe don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Maybe I'm just being overreactionary. I think Ruka Rororo looks like a 49er if I know anything about Chris Kacerik's defensive mindset and what the 49ers are trying to do moving forward. Ruka Rororo is going to be much higher on their board than he's going to be on everybody else's. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. He's not going to fit everyone's scheme. He's not going to fit everyone's system, but he fits the 49ers. And to find a player like that with the athletic upside that this guy has, with the block shedding ability that this guy has at 63, that's a huge win, especially when you desperately need more defensive linemen. You got your starter in Malik Collins, but you need depth there, and you need depth there in a serious way. Ruka Row, man. I'm really excited about the possibility of him at 63. And then real quick, I'll throw you at pick number 94. I went a couple different directions on this one. So there's a guy out of South Dakota State. He's a guard. His name is Mason McCormick. I really like Mason McCormick. I think Mason McCormick is a high floor, low ceiling kind of guy. I think Mason McCormick's a dude. I think Mason McCormick comes in and is immediately an NFL offensive lineman. And I think that's a pretty hard thing to be in the modern age of college football, because they don't teach you squat, apparently, playing offensive line in the college game these days, man. These guys, there's been two trends clear in the NFL draft over the last 5, maybe even 10 years. One is wide receivers are just awesome at the college level. They don't need any seasoning. They're ready to rumble from day one when they come into the NFL. Now, some systems tougher than others, 49ers being one of them. But these guys are so talented. They got so many reps. They've just lived in an existence where the wide receiver is everything. And to separate from just a mass of humans at the wide receiver position, because there's just so many guys with talent, to separate, you got to be really special. And the guys who come out every year, it's another 1 or 2 players that are first round worthy at the wide receiver position. And it makes sense. Football's just 7-on-7 in the college level. Yeah, they got 11 guys out there, but they're just playing 7-on-7 football in most games, especially when you're outside of the SEC, especially when you're outside of the Big Ten. It's just 7-on-7. And these guys have lived in an environment where they've played 7-on-7 every day for their entire life. These receivers are sick. And obviously it builds up corners too, which is why we're seeing some very high-level cornerbacks year after year. Now, the drop-off after that's pretty significant, but like the game is more outside than it is inside today because of the way that it's practiced, because of the way the reps are gotten in. There's not as much contact, so the trenches suffer. I think that there's a lot of talent and athleticism at defensive line, but these guys don't come out with the technique that they used to. These guys don't come out with the ability to shed blocks and to, a bunch of different pass rush moves. They don't have that stuff anymore because it's just, you're a dude, he's a dude, see who's the bigger dude. See who's the faster dude, see who's the stronger dude. The technique isn't there. All the technique is on the outside these days. All of it's at quarterback because it's just 7-on-7. So offensive line, I think, has just been sort of left to die. And you'll hear NFL coaches talk about this all the time. Offensive line play is just awful at the college level, to the point where you almost need to redshirt everyone. And you're seeing in mock drafts and the way that it's conversed about right now, with the offensive line play, like, if you're somebody who has the possibility to play on day one, if you're somebody who doesn't just have the potential, but just the floor that's high enough to play day one, your draft stock is through the roof. I mean, you look at the first round of this draft, I don't know if any of these guys would be, half of them wouldn't be considered. Like Joe Alt would be, the kid from Washington would be, maybe the Oregon State guy would be. But there's a lot of guys at the bottom end of the first round, a lot of guys that some Niners fans are talking about as a possibility. A kid from Oklahoma is one where it's like there's no technique. There's no real understanding of how to play the position. It's all just projection. It's all just saying he's 6'7", 340 pounds. He can, move like this, push like this. We can turn him into something. And you're taking that guy in the first round. In a first round that you should be a first day starter. You should if you're in the first round, you should play day one. That's at least how I came to understand the NFL draft. And now it's because offensive line play is so bad. If you're picked on day one as an offensive lineman, you might not play until year 2. And honestly, it's probably better. You give them that quarterback redshirt year, because you look at a guy like Andrew Thomas with the Giants, and it was pretty rough goings that first year. Now he came through, but it was pretty rough goings. So this draft, and I think, okay, should the Niners take a project for an offensive lineman when they have other needs? I don't know. Not unless they really feel strongly about the projectability of a guy. I think that it's too dangerous with the needs that they have at number 2 corner, on the defensive line. I think even you can argue wide receiver with the Deebo Samuel situation, hell, with tight end even. I'm not sure that their biggest need right now is offensive line. And that's crazy because it's clearly a need. At the same time, you flip it, you can get a Mason McCormick at guard in the third round, and he's a very high floor player who I think can give you reps right away. And you do have the ability to redshirt him. And where could you go from there? So, and you're seeing what the guard market is. I would be drafting guards, much like I would always draft a quarterback in the late rounds just to see, because you can pay $50 million, or you can just take a shot with one in the 7th round every year or 6th round every year and hope that you're winning the crap game. I do the same thing with guards. I take as many guards as you can get. Take as many tackles who could play guard as you can get. These guys are too expensive. And at some point, you have to make sacrifices in terms of what you're going to pay guys. I like Mason McCormick at 94. That said, there was a name that popped up when I was doing my research on this. And I'd like to, mock drafts are pretty nonsensical, but there's a couple of guys who do mock drafts that I think really do the legwork. And as someone who used to do mock drafts and didn't do the legwork to begin with, and then really started doing the legwork, probably beyond the scope of what was ever needed. I mean, definitely beyond the scope of what was ever needed, but like really started developing sources with teams to try to understand what their mindset was. I tried to go above and beyond. It took way too much time. I mean, I was staying up all night for stuff like this. It was absurd, but I didn't have a kid, just had a girlfriend. I was back and forth between LA and San Francisco. I'm like, forget it. Have a couple beers, send out a couple text messages, and let's get to getting with a true 7-round mock. But and I took it. So I know how difficult it is to do them right. And I think recognize when people do them right. I think the folks at NFL Network do a great job. I think the folks at The Athletic do a great job. Everything else is just sort of guessing. Everything else is just sort of kind of what we're doing here, because we're not into the deep sourced material yet, where we just go, what would be the fit? What would be the logical pick at this spot? And we'll get into the sourcing and stuff. And I'll start, as we start moving forward here, I'll start giving you names for teams in the NFC West and what they're hearing about the Niners. And the Niners keep it really bottled up. Credit to them. Stuff will leak out every now and again. It'll come through, but it's usually coming through a proxy, which you can never really trust all that much. You don't really care about that. Here's the name that I saw that I really liked. Zach Zinter. He's a guard out of Michigan. And for everything I just said about how they're not teaching guys at the FBS level, and by the way, Mason McCormick, FCS, and that's a team that runs the ball first and foremost. Like South Dakota State runs a very similar offense to what the 49ers run. It's very NFL-centered offense. But if you're talking about NFL offenses at the college level, Zach Zinter out of Michigan. There's one team that you can trust year in and year out. Well, you could trust them. Now you can't so much anymore. We'll see what happens. But you could trust that Michigan was preparing their offensive linemen correct. You could trust that Michigan had NFL quality offensive line play throughout Jim Harbaugh's era, because he didn't change his game for anybody. There was talk about him doing it, and he mixed it up a little bit, but he went right back to what he knows, which is NFL, slam the ball offense. Physicality, technique, and then you add on the athleticism, you win a national championship. But Zach Zinter, their right guard this last year, he's somebody that I took note of a couple of times when I was watching Michigan. And I'll do that. I have a notebook and a couple of, note docs on my phone and whatnot, where if I'm watching a college game and I see a player and I just think draft, just think like, oh, that's a dude. That's a guy. That's someone I want to look up later. Interested in this guy. I'll do that. Now I have about probably 40, 50 names. I try to keep it pretty exclusive. I went through that list a couple of days ago. Zach Zinter's name showed up 3 times. Every time I watch Michigan, I'm like, man, this right guard is awesome. That's the kind of nerd I am, by the way. Man, what a great right guard while I watch this game. It's Michigan. There wasn't that much else to go. The Zach Zinter, if he's there, and I think he's a 3rd-round pick for reasons I can't quite explain. Everybody seems to think he's a 3rd-round pick. I'll get into the nitty-gritty on him. This is a surface-level take. I've gotten into the nitty-gritty on Mason McCormick. I've gotten into the nitty-gritty on a row. I've gotten into the nitty-gritty beyond what anyone should for Ennis Rakestraw or Chris Abrams-Drain or anybody from Mizzou. I know those guys inside and out. I haven't dove into Zach Zinter. All I know is this. Every time I watch Michigan, I sure seem to like him. That's got to mean something. It's got to mean something to me. Maybe it means something to you. Maybe it doesn't. But Zach Zinter, if he's there in the 3rd round, now we're cooking. Because You got Spencer Burford at right guard for the 49ers, John Feliciano. They're going to rotate again, I guess. You have Aaron Banks, who has his moments where you can see him getting a second contract. And there's a lot of moments where you think, I don't think we should keep him around anymore. You got a center position that is good but not great, and right tackle's kind of, ugh. You got guards out here making $20 million a year. Like, I think Zach Zinter or Mason McCormick would make a whole lot of sense. The drop-off from those guys to day 3 is pretty significant. The drop-off from those guys to options on day 3, I think, is the difference between a guy who can play for you in year 1 and a guy who might get cut at the beginning of training camp. And it's just how it goes. Zach Zinter, if he's there, and I haven't seen him actually fall all the way to the Niners at 94, but he's in that vicinity. And this might be a guy that you trade up for. I'll get more into the nitty-gritty about it as these weeks go on, now that free agency is dying down. Still thinking the Niners should go out and get a number 2 corner. Still thinking that, hey, you can throw some money at some of your problems as opposed to waiting until the draft where anything can happen and you might end up with nobody that you really wanted. You might, now you're trading down a couple of times because, hey, we really wanted this guy, but then someone jumped up in front of us and got him. Or it's too volatile to bet on. The house will win if you bet on the NFL draft to fix your problems. Are you going to have a great time throwing money at your problems at this point in free agency? Probably not. Probably never. It probably doesn't matter what point because the inflation is so out of control. At the same time, man, guards are making $20 million a year for what? I mean, not to be rude, but like $20 million a year. I don't care what I don't care what year it is. It could be 2029. It could be the year 2300. I mean, $20 million for a guard just doesn't make sense to me. I know it doesn't make sense for the 49ers with the way that they've treated their guards over the years. Man, I'd be drafting guards left and right. Clearly, the market inefficiency is there. Same thing with quarterbacks. Anytime a player or a position becomes a $20 million a year position, you need to just take dudes on spec. You need to just take dudes on their athleticism. You need to take dudes on their college production. You just need to draft those positions. And everything else you can fill in free agency. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe safety is one of those spots still. Linebacker might still be one of those spots. Running back can be one of those spots. I guess tight end, though the Niners haven't done anything there. Like maybe that's one of those spots. But like wide receiver, I mean, think about the premium positions in the NFL today. Wide receiver, quarterback, obviously, tackle, maybe even both of them, corner, defensive end. I mean, you can make the argument defensive tackle. All of those positions you should be drafting all the time, just on spec. Everything else you fill with money. That's where I stand today. I didn't think at guard would become part of those premium positions, but apparently it is, man. Apparently guard is one of those premium positions. I think Zach Zinter can be a premier guard in the NFL tomorrow. He was so good at Michigan, man. I don't know what I'm missing. He was so good at Michigan. All right. That's the show. We'll talk tomorrow. We'll break down Warriors and Knicks. Yeah, Warriors and Knicks. What a time to be alive. Warriors better get this because they have 3 home games this week. It's the Knicks. Who do they play on Wednesday? Grizzlies. And then the Pacers on Friday at home. And then they're gone for like 2.5 weeks. So I know that the home road splits haven't been as pronounced as last year because last year was brutal. But if the Warriors really do think that they got something going on here, they need to start winning at home. And beyond that, they need to just build up a bit of a cushion here, because if they want that 9 seed, I don't think eight's reasonable. They do have 2 games left against the Mavericks, but if they want that 9 seed, 1 game doesn't matter. The schedule got crazy with everything that happened midseason. I was talking to somebody today, and I'm like, well, yeah, they'll be in Dallas on April 2nd or April 5th or something. Like, no, that game's in San Francisco. I just had no idea because the schedule's changed so many times now. In-season tournament, Decky's death, it just mixed everything up regardless. Warriors have a lot of road games down the stretch. They've been good on the road. That doesn't mean they'll stay good on the road. Road games late in the season, that's a dangerous concoction. So win these 3 home games that you got. Take care of business with your 3 home games. It's not something I think the Warriors have done very well this season. Doesn't feel like Chase Center has been a big advantage to them. I understand the context and the circumstance, but something to think about here as we head into tonight's game against the Knicks at Chase Center. And, oh, yeah, by the way, we're like a week and a half away. Shit, they'll play baseball in Korea over the weekend, regular season. So good times, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, have a good one.